Hello and welcome everyone to this third of our ongoing series all about that place. It's a pleasure to have all of you here for this live program. This is one of a series of 5 and maybe 6 programs all about that place that we as Project Kin have the privilege of running in support of, in celebration of the All About That Place series sponsored by the Society of Genealogists in the UK, along with the Society for One Place Studies, the British Association for Local History, and a number of remarkable sponsors. It's just such a fabulous way to create great joy and community in a common interest and common focus. Here in our series, we said to the Society of Genealogists, hey, you're having all this fun in London for 12 hours, starting at 8 a.m. in London through 8 p.m. in London. And you know what? At 8 a.m. in London, it's midnight in California, and we're a little jealous. So we want to have our own program here and provide that as a benefit for the Pacific Rim. And of course, that's our definition of Pacific to include evening in New York through dawn in Perth, Australia, and Hong Kong. So that's what we do. 4 p.m. Pacific time lets us take that magic stretch. And here we are with live programs to do something a little different that run a full hour so that we can talk with you. So here we are. And today we're very fortunate to have 2 remarkable, very serious, very experienced genealogists speaking with us today. First, Karen de Bruyne, who is joining us secretly from London, but she's staying up in the middle of the night so that she can talk about her great uncle Bill, if I've got that correct. She'll have a fairly brief presentation, and we can take a few questions, clarifications at the end of that. I want to make sure that she can get some sleep and not have to be too alert for too long. That will be followed by Allison Singleton, who is here from the remarkable Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, Indiana. The genealogycenter.org is legendary here in, really, I'll say the Americas, because I think that includes their remarkable collection, including Canada, as well as really globally. This remarkable library, she'll be able to tell you a little bit more about, has managed to become this incredible center of genealogical excellence, both in their staff and the records that they have compiled and supported, and it's essentially been trusted to archive. So she'll talk a little bit about that. Before I do that, a very brief, who is this people? Who are these people? Who is projectkin.org? Essentially, it's a community. I'll be sharing the email via email. I'll be sharing with all of you, even those of you who are not yet members, all about what we're doing, and most importantly, the recording for this program. As posted to Project Kin, we'll also be including some remarkable resources that Karen and Allison have shared with me to include for you. And we get to have a discussion, conversation that can linger long beyond the initial post. And you're very welcome to explore all of our archives. All of Project Kin is free. Essentially, I wanted this to happen. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in Silicon Valley my whole career. Have fallen into the rabbit hole of genealogy and believe this should happen. My costs are virtually nil, small, but not almost non-existent. And with that, I'm able to support this to be happening, and it is keeping my skills sharp to make it happen for everyone. And it's a pleasure to host this and make this happen. So you can read all about that at projectkin.org. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and get started. So to begin the program, I'll turn to Karen, who has some slides for you. I'm going to turn off my video as well, or to your preference, Karen. Do you want to have somebody to talk to? It's up to you.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
All righty then. I'll do that, and go ahead and mute your microphones, and
Okay.
we're looking forward to your talk. Thank you, Karen.
Share my screen. Okay, is that sharing the PowerPoint okay?
Yep, we see it. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Right. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, it is midnight here, and this talk is full of information. I've had to condense it a bit to get it into the allowed time slot. So I'm going to be talking about a very large place, being India, and how you can find some more information if you discover you have family who were there for any length of time. Most of the examples I'm giving are from our very large family tree, and a couple of items from client projects that I've done in the past that I've anonymized to make sure for confidentiality. So, a little quick history lesson. British India is broadly the subcontinent of India that includes all areas and activities of the British in South Asia between the founding of the East India Company in 1599 to Indian independence in 1947. But when I refer to the records, I mean those in that list, although records are not available for all the places for all those times. It includes not just the British, but also something like the large Armenian populations that were around those areas at the time. But it does not include natives of India, except where they had a relationship with Indian residents. And sometimes they worked for British India companies, although it's harder to identify. So just to give an example, my brother-in-law was born in Uganda to Indian parents. His family records are not included in this. So the British East India Company was given a royal charter by Queen Elizabeth I in 1600, which granted the monopoly on the trade with the East Indies. The charter also gave the company permission to establish forts or factories in the East Indies. The British had land and had to have loads of employees, part of the East India Company, to run this. It was the first ever joint stock company and the start of what we have here, which is limited and public limited company structure of today. That trade had a monopoly on Spain and Portugal until the defeat of the Armada, and the charter gave the English the chance to break the monopoly. This image here is of India House by Thomas Moulton, which was the first headquarters of the British India Company. They traded in textiles, spices, porcelain, and tea. And as it grew, it needed secure India settlements from European rivals and hostile locals, and set up various presidencies, Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta, which came under the remit of Bengal. Up until the point of the what the Indians would call the first revolution in 1857, then there was a rather oppressive rule which had a lot of regulations, etc. So British India doesn't just actually include India, it includes loads of other countries, and some of these you will think were actually repeated. It's just because of the boundaries and the lines and what they were called that changed over time. And so, yeah, and my examples include some of these. So, how do you discover you have an Indian connection? Well, you might spot something on a census. Here in the UK, our censuses will say where somebody was born. And bizarrely, I found a while ago that I have 2 Indian princesses in my broad family tree. They're relations, definitely not family, that were born to a gentleman who was a sea captain in Rotherhithe. Just be aware, in American censuses, often the word India does not mean the same. So we can see here, princess, and they were born in India. And this is the relationship. So they were children and princesses. Kind of cool. When researching a newspaper announcement for a wedding of one of my husband's ancestors, I discovered that it says he was late of the Prince of Wales Island, which is the name they gave the Penang, which is off the coast of Malaysia. And I never knew that he'd been there. I'd found his baptism, his marriage, and his burial all in Scotland. So this was quite a big surprise. Missing from records in Britain for a period of time. If somebody, you can't find them, then a certain organisation suggests why not look in India, because they may have been there for a while. They could have been just passing through for work. So just look in India, it's always worth it. So this picture is the same gentleman as was on the original picture at the beginning of my presentation, my great uncle Bill and his wife Vera, when they were visiting Agra. There are very few records. Mostly I've got images and things from our own family collection. They had no children, so I've ended up with all the photos and travel documents, etc. But I have found passenger records, so I can pin down a little the dates that they were actually in India. So let's look at some of the basics. So birth, marriage and death records. Well, in British India, there are no real birth, marriage, death records, except for those that were registered as British Armed Forces and overseas. So we're going to have a brief look at those first. So you could register with a consulate. Find My Past has these record sets, and you can search for these. Ancestry also has them in their card catalogue. If you search for overseas, you can find these. It does also help sometimes to click on the only records from the UK and Ireland, because although they're overseas, it's classed as those records. Family Search has some indexed as well, which is useful because that's obviously a free website. And also a website that some of you may not be familiar with, which is the Genealogist, and that has some as well. That is a big focus on British records, but they also have the overseas births, marriages and deaths. There aren't any on MyHeritage yet that I've discovered. So if you find that there's a listing of an event, example here, a marriage in Thailand, or Siam as it was, in Bangkok, then you need to order the certificate. You can't actually see the certificate anywhere, they're not scanned. There are a few that have crept into Ancestry recently, but the majority you have to order the certificate from the General Register Office in the UK. You will need the information, because you can't search for the entry, about the person and the page reference and archive reference and line number. So having that to the side is a useful idea. You then go to the GRO site to order the certificate. Here it costs £14. I believe it's slightly more if you're somewhere else outside the UK, and it takes around 15 days to get to you, and you get the piece of paper, the certificate telling you about that event. So for most of the British India records, you're going to be looking for baptisms, marriages and burials, and these exist right up to the Indian independence in 1947. So you need to look for indexes and then images. So Ancestry, you can search there, like a lot of the genealogy sites, but they are just the indexes. You can search by the name. Just be wary, you do get a lot of Indiana come up, but then you can also filter by like the word Asia, and that helps. And you will get the indexes, which is, if you have your tree on Ancestry, is a good way of pulling in the information. If you are have Americans that were born in other places outside America, there are actually, I discovered, consular reports of births. I thought I'd add that in as well, that you can look at. I did ask Krista Cowan, and she said she wasn't aware of anything before that time period. She thought it would be local registration. MyHeritage, you can also have a look at and see whether you can search for the India births, marriages and deaths, or baptisms and burials and death, marriages. They are just indexed as well. The genealogist has a few, but not many. And except for the overseas one. So the main site to get the information is Find My Past, because they have a relationship with the British Library, and they have digitized most of the births, baptisms, burials, and marriages. So you can search for these to see if you can find the image, because as we know, the image is exceedingly important when looking for these records, because they can tell you more than the index does say. I say nearly all the images. Occasionally there are some missing. We'll get onto that. And it's a good idea. I've bookmarked this search looking for all the India records, because once you get into the India records, you might need to go further. Family Search have also indexed, and they have some of the images for British India, so it's also worth looking there. And occasionally you'll get it on one of the, like Family Search, and you won't get the image and Find My Past, but it's mostly the other way around. So if you can't find it on Find My Past, then have a look at Family Search. Now, the next website I'm going to recommend is the Families in British India Society, an amazing organisation that has a free research database. Not many images, it is mostly indexes, but it can give you a really good start. So you go to the research, search databases, and then you can put in a name and pull up some entries. It takes some getting used to, but it is really good, and it has a whole load of things extra as well. So the first example we're going to look for is in my family, and it's a baptism. So you get the index here of the actual baptism. It tells you where it is, and then you can click on the view the original image, and it gives you the image telling you that it was James Neil Campbell, born 27th of April, baptised 22nd of May 1862, son of James and Sophia. His trade was captain in the 22nd Native Infantry. Earlier baptisms, the earlier ones don't give you as much information, and they are exceedingly hard to read. Similarly, a marriage that I searched for, this is tells you some information which is useful. So this is in 1912. It tells us they were both widows. He was a drum major of the first pioneers. The fathers rather, were William Beatty and Joseph Andrews. And it also tells us the witnesses, which is another useful fact if you're trying to find out things about people. Although they're usually, if it's in India, acquaintances, unless they're a long time family in India, but that can give you more clues as well. The older marriages, again, are really hard to read. You need a nice big screen and carefully transcribe it. Doesn't give you as much information, rarely gives you fathers' names. This is from 1839. Burial registers, very similar. This one is of the, James Campbell, the first son of the couple, James and Sophia. And it tells you what he died of, convulsions, and what his father did. So if it's a child, it will tell you what his father did, which is very useful. If it's an adult, it will tell you what they did, unless it's a female, and they will often tell you what the husband or father did. So James died of convulsions in 1861. Okay, earlier burial records, like all the others, are quite hard to read, gives you similar sorts of information about where the burial was, etc. Also for burials, there's an organisation called the British Association for Cemeteries in South Asia, and they've gone around a lot of the European cemeteries in the Far East and Southeast and in Asia, and they've indexed a huge amount of them, and they've actually gone around and transcribed a lot of the monumental inscriptions. And this website is free as well. So you go to Find, look for the burials information, and then it's got a similar search box to FIBIS. Put the information in, and you come back with an index here. And this gives you an idea of the what's on the register. They publish these little books as well, and if you get hold of one of these little books, it gives you some sometimes give you more information. Those books are actually available in the Family Search Library in Utah, I discovered. If you look at their catalogue, it tells you, and they're also available in the British Library on the shelves there. Okay. So as I said, if you can't find the image on Find My Pass, look on Family Search. If you can't find the image on Family Search, unfortunately, you will need to go to the British Library. And the bit you need, if you're in the British Library, is this piece here, the archive reference. That tells you that it's on a microfilm reel N-3-36, folio 87. So you go to the big cabinets at the back and have a look for the microfilm, and then pull out the baptism or whatever it is that you want. Usually you can screenshot it and email it to yourself, but unfortunately, because of the cyber attack, that's not available at the moment. So censuses, unfortunately, the censuses in India are not a lot of use. Some places there are early ones, but basically they're just lists of people. So we have to use substitutes. And the best substitutes I've found are directories. So the India office, or before that, the East India Company, published these. You can't tell from the picture, but they're quite small little red binders that are in the British Library, but many of them are digitized on Ancestry. So you can see, or you can also find them on the Internet Archive and Google Books, some of them. And this lists people that were in certain places. So this person is one of my husband's ancestors, James Tate, a mariner, and he's a European resident inhabitant, which meant he didn't actually work for the East India Company, but he was a resident living in Bengal at the time. Other things, for certain areas, there are a large collection for more recent things called Thacker's Indian directories, which are also, some of them are digitized, and there's a vast collection in the British Library, as I imagine there are in some other libraries. The FIBIS website has something that's called a FibiWiki, and part of the FibiWiki is a Google Books library where they've collated books that they've found digitized on all sorts of subjects. These are, as far as I'm aware, just India and not the broader British India, but they're an amazing source to have a look through, to have a look at those. As I said, the Internet Archive also has lots of different types of books, so it's worth putting a search in there. You can set up an account on the Internet Archive, and then you can bookmark them, which is really useful, so you know where they are to go back for later. Cornell University has digitized a group of books that were published around 1910-ish, plus or minus 5 or 10 years, called 20th Century Impressions. This one example is British Malaya, its people, its histories, etc. But they've got a lot of other countries as well. These are really amazing books. They have a huge amount of history in them, but they also have, it's a bit fuzzy to read, unfortunately, but they also have profiles of various people. So this is one of my husband's other great-grandfathers, and it tells you about where he came from, what he did, what his occupations are, and it also has photos of his tin mines and of him. Now, one little drawback of these was you had to pay to be in the directory, so that's not overly helpful. So some people did not obviously pay to be in this particular directory. The occupation that your ancestor had can be really useful because there are various sources that are focused on these types of occupations. The FIBIS publish various guides for different occupations, which are worth having a look at. Some of them are available as PDFs that you can buy and download. The general one is called Baxter's Guide, and that's like the go-to book for help. And then they publish all these specific guides about different things, like different types of occupations, like the railways and military, etc. Don't forget, people had to get to India. So more recently, I would say after about 1860-ish, you can start to look for passenger records, which are really useful. But the little tip here, the passenger records are often indexed by the start point and the end point of the journey. So you may find that person's name, but then you discover that, think, well, I don't think they went to Australia or wherever it was. But if you actually look at the entry itself, you can see where they got on and off. So in this example here, they got on at Bombay and then got on in India. got off in England. Okay, some books, some useful. I think a lot of us like to know about the background of what happened to people in their lives. We may not find the exact story of our ancestors, but reading around the story is really good. Unfortunately, the story of women is very underwritten about, although it's getting better. This book was particularly interesting, called The Fishing Fleet, and it's about women who traveled to the east in order to find husbands. And this went on for a very long time. Don't forget archives and libraries, really useful. Lots of different places. There are some in London, but other places have them as well. Other countries have libraries and others towns, which may be useful. The Archives of India has a lot of digitized, and Malaysia and Singapore has loads of things. Don't forget, Google it. If you're not sure, you never know what may come up. Don't forget Phibis. It has a Wikipedia, which is really useful for sources. Tons of things hiding in there. Probably not really relevant to most of you if you're far away, but the British Library do 1 half-day classes on researching documents as well. And the best one book, if you're going to have a book, which you can get on a Kindle, is by Emma Jolly, Tracing Your British India Ancestors. There is a course you can do with the International Institute of Genealogical Studies, and lots of YouTube videos you might find useful. And lastly, really, is social media, and a few more book examples, and then my contact details. So if you're not sure, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you
Stop
so much.
sharing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Karen, that was
That was a race
fabulous.
through.
Oh, I know, but that was such an incredible collection of details to this. And you'll be sending me your slides as well so that I can include them with the
Yes,
notes, or
I can do, but there is a handout on my website. Would you be better to send you that?
point me to either and both in a separate note and I'll include
Okay,
it. But
right.
kindly
Yeah,
do that as soon as you can, and
yeah.
I'll, because I know it's
Okay.
awfully late for you.
Yeah,
I'd like to be
I will
sending
do
these
that first
notes
thing
out.
tomorrow morning.
Okay, then I'll point to that and it can be in the notes because
Okay.
I'm gonna get this out tonight.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Oh, I
Thank you
might do
so
it while
much.
I'm listening to, well, I'll do it while I'm listening to the other talk, maybe. That would be a
Thank
good
you
plan,
so
wouldn't it?
much.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any quick questions for Karen before we move on to Allison? You know, I hadn't thought about the link India and Indiana until you mentioned
Yes.
it.
It's quite frustrating.
That's a little mind-blowing, actually, come to think
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Um, well, with that, let me turn it over to Allison. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. And what a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Karen. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. It should be shared now. All right, everything should look good. Let's get started. Well, as
Okay.
I was introduced, my name is Allison DePrey Singleton. I am the Genealogy Services Manager at the Allen County Public Library. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video, mainly because I'm going to be showing a video and I found that it works better if my video is off. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And we're going to talk about finding family locations through the Genealogy Center. So as I said, I work there. I've been there for about 8 years now. And I absolutely love what I do. I get to help people that come in, explore their family histories, find their family histories, and so much more. The Genealogy Center actually started full force in 1961 when a rather eccentric director by the name of Fred Reynolds decided that he wanted to cater towards genealogists. Prior to that, he noticed that sometimes genealogists were not as well taken care of in a library setting because of the very specific questions that they had, and it was so incredibly focused, and that made it difficult for some librarians. So he decided to cater towards them. He began buying books at garage sales, estate sales, and doing exchanges with other libraries for preservation purposes, photocopying their materials. Since then, the library has grown and grown. So the Genealogy Center now has more than 1.2 million physical items. That is 1.2. We have more than 5 million records and images that we've digitized on our website. Our physical space is 42,000 square feet. And that space is space that is filled with books and research tables, microfilm and fiche, microfilm readers, computers, all sorts of things that help you with your genealogical research. Now, it's a beautiful building and it's a large department, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows how big it is. So I like to include this short video, and I'll only play the first part. All right, so what you saw there is the Genealogy Center. And while you may be thinking, okay, it's in Fort Wayne, Indiana, what else is in this? Is there something for me? And I will tell you, yes. So our collection physically focuses on North America.
Whoops. Allison?
My sound is here. Hold on. So our physical collection is massive. So we have things for all over North America.
She obviously has a slight interruption. She'll be right back. There we go.
Sorry about that. My 3-year-old decided that he needed to come in. All right, so that's what I get for home office.
Always welcome.
The Genealogy Center also has things beyond North America. We have one of the largest collections of Canadian records outside of Canada. We have one of the largest collections of South African materials out of South Africa. We have all sorts of materials. We have a really robust United Kingdom collection, etc. And then we also subscribe to some of the most powerful databases you can find. There's 24 that we pay for, so our customers don't have to. And that does include Ancestry World, Find My Past, My Heritage, and beyond. We also have our genealogy librarians, and all of us are genealogists. We do research, and we want everyone to be successful. So we work very hard to make sure that that is the case. And you'll hear a little bit about that as I continue. So the importance of location and genealogical research. Oh my goodness, it is so important to know where your ancestors are from and to understand the location. So it's really important. We just heard this wonderful presentation about India, and we got a little bit of the history of it because that is important. Another thing that I heard in the previous presentation is the boundaries change between countries, and that is so true. It's true in so many locations. Europe is especially wonderful example. I love when people first start doing research and discover that Germany is in fact quite the baby of a country. And then in the United States, we have boundary changes in all of the different counties. There's so many different things that we find. But local records are a window to the past, and we want to be able to look through those. So resources at the Genealogy Center for location-based research. Well, there's our physical collection, which I mentioned was 1.2 million physical items. We have our online collection, which includes all of those amazing databases if you're on site, which you have to physically be at the building, or we have the online collection of free databases that is also on our website, and I will show you where those are in a moment. And lastly, we have our periodical source index, lovingly called Percy. This is an index of periodicals from all over, and that is beyond the United States. And these are boots on the ground periodicals from historical societies, genealogical societies, and more that have to do with genealogy and history and help you complete that family tree. This is our website, genealogycenter.org. I won't let you forget it. Once you're here, you'll see this lovely image. And the very first thing I want to show you is that you can do a search within our catalog. Now, searching our catalog, you may be thinking, well, I don't live there. I'm not visiting anytime soon. What am I going to do with this content? Well, one of the things I'd like to tell people is that you have the option to search for those records, for those books in other locations through things like worldcat.org. You can see if there's a local library that has it. And if not, contact us. While we may not be able to send you a book or a copy of the book, we can give you ideas on how to get that content. So we have this search term and we're going to put in a location. So I decided Teller County, Colorado was going to be the location of choice for this. Once I hit the enter button, you get that whole list of different materials. We have the name of the book, the call number, and I will tell you, searching our collection in person is easy because every single state is organized the same way. It's general, counties alphabetical, towns and cities alphabetical. We use a modified Dewey Decimal System, so everything can stay together by location. So you can browse and have those wonderful moments of kismet where something just appears. Now you can use all of these wonderful different filters off to the side, but the biggest thing you need to know is that remembering our collection is one that you can only access while you're at the Genealogy Center. So it says place a request. That is because we are on the same system as the rest of the library. So that is there, but if you try to place a request, you'll get an error message. If you try to create an account, you will get an error message because you have to be an Allen County resident to get a card. And honestly, you're not going to get the benefits of having that. But stay tuned. Later this month, there will be an announcement about genealogy cards, perhaps. However, you can add to a list and create a wonderful list of materials that you want to look at or research further. And that will be saved just when the browser is open. Let's go back to our original page here. So this is genealogycenter.org, and we're going to go ahead and click here. We're going to actually do a quick scroll down so we can go back here, and you want to look at this bar down at the very bottom. We have our resources, family history archives, our services, and plan your visit. We're going to click on that very first one called our resources. Now, we have all of these wonderful databases, and like I mentioned before, we have them in two different categories. If you scroll down, you're going to find that you can filter by database type, and you can change it from free or on-site, or you can look at them all. And you can see that there's a lot of different types of things. We're going to go ahead and filter to just the free databases because these are the things that you can access from anywhere in the Milky Way galaxy, and I want you to have that access. Once you're there, there are three that are pretty good for location-based. Now, let me tell you, these are not the only ones in these free databases. These are just the ones that focus on those locations. So of course we have the Allen County, Indiana resources. That's where we're physically located. We get a lot of people that donate these digital collections that are incredibly helpful for researchers. Again, we're in Indiana, so we have Indiana resources. And then we have other states' resources. And I will tell you with the other states, that's where our other countries are as well. We don't have a separate category for that yet. But what I want to show you next, oh, and one more thing is those are organized in alphabetical order by county, and you can find pretty much any location within each state. Now, if we don't have something and you happen to know of digital content, content. I wouldn't say no to an email about that digital content. We would be happy to add it to our collection. Lots of copies keeps things safe. Going back to our genealogycenter.org page, we're going to go ahead and go to the Family History Archives. Once we're here, we're actually going to scroll down a wee bit so you can see that we have some different things highlighted. Now, a lot of people click on this page and they're like, okay, what's in here? The things that are in here are so powerful. On the left-hand side are online collaborations. The first two are the ones that we're going to focus on today. The very first one, Family Search Digital Library, they have a scanning station in our basement. They have dedicated missionaries that come out to do the digitization of our collection that is not in copyright. The second one, Internet Archive, also has a scanning station in our basement. They too are digitizing content from our collection that is out of copyright. Think about that. Our books are being digitized, and all of that content is free and online for you to utilize from home, in your pajamas, wherever. Now, these two collections are pretty amazing and not included in that number I gave you at the beginning. When I said we have digitized over 5 million records and images, that's on our website under the free databases. Our online collaborations are completely separate. So let's first go to Family Search Digital Library. Once you're there, you get this wonderful search bar. And I will tell you, you could go down and you could select the Allen County Public Library and search our collection specifically, but there isn't any reason to do so because you want to search everything they have. You don't want to narrow your search by that much. You have access to so much more. But no, our collection is actively being added to this. And as I mentioned, you can go specifically to our collection, but again, why limit what you're searching? And you can see that we have a massive collection there, over 44,000 materials that have been digitized. And what's funny to me is some of those Internet Archive items are things from our collection as well. So if you look at the entries, you can actually see which things are overlap. But those are things that are freely accessible. If you're familiar with the Family Search Digital Library, you know some of them are private or restricted. Everything from the Allen County Public Library is free and open and public, and you can search it anytime. Our second one is Internet Archive. If you're not familiar with Internet Archive, I highly recommend becoming familiar. When you click on it, you go to our collection specifically, which as of last week was at 121,000 things that have been digitized from our collection. And you're going to be able to search inside. And you can also restrict by time period. You can play around with the different filters that they have. But I'm going to give you a recommendation. I would recommend going up. It's a little bit cut off in here, but there's books up here. And if you click on that, you can actually get to all of the books that have been digitized. And then you can search a little more broadly. You never know what's been digitized, and you don't know who has digitized it. So our collection is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. And there's a lot of amazing resources, but don't limit yourself. Make sure you're looking everywhere. Okay. Let's go ahead and go back to genealogycenter.org. I told you I wasn't going to let you forget that. And scroll down again, because here's the other thing that you really need to look at for that truly exhaustive research. The Periodical Source Index, or PERSI. Right now, the website says more than 3.1 million citations. It's actually more than 3.2. All right, we're going to go ahead and click on the Learn More button, and that takes you to PERSI. Now, what is great about PERSI is these are the titles of the articles that are being indexed. This began in 1984, And as you can imagine, it has grown through many different iterations. It has been on CD-ROM, it's been in book form, it's been on various websites, including paid websites. So we were very excited when we were able to bring it home, when we were able to put it on our website and have it freely accessible for anyone to search at any point in the day. Now, since these are titles of articles, it's not in every name index. So you have to be a little creative when you search. I'm going to scroll down so you can see all of the different options. You can search by surname, by location, research techniques, or article title keyword. And I recommend playing around with all of those. But again, it's article titles. Most of our ancestors don't actually have articles written specifically about them, or even their family lines. It's more going to be in the sections on location, and you're going to find some really amazing records that way. So let's go ahead and take a look at the United States. And here's what you come up with. It gives you the option to look at a state. You could look at the US in general. That brings back a lot of results. You can choose a state and look at what that location brings back. But for our purposes today, we're going to go ahead and choose something. New York, Ontario County. I want to show you something from the other side of the country. Once we click on the search, we're going to get a list of results. And now what these are categories that these articles fall under. Now remember, this index was created back in 1984. It was prior to modern database technology. So we are limited to what we can put in here and how it can be described in many different ways. That being the case, we still are doing this every single day. Entries are added. There are dedicated staff members that all their job is Percy. So you see this list, and what you want to do is look at it and try to figure out what's going to be applicable to your research. For our purposes, we're looking at locations. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. So you'd want to look maybe at deeds, see the land. What can we learn about it? Well, there's just one there, so let's see what it is. Oh, it's a grantee index, 1809 to 1813, early land purchases. That sounds rather interesting. If your family was in that county during that time period, that would be a really good resource. And you know, sometimes things that are written in articles are things that are not digitized yet. They aren't put somewhere where you can find them easily, especially in locations where research is more difficult, like maybe New York or California, or one of those places that reclaims the records is going after. Now, also look at the year published. So this is 1990. Some of these were published in the 1700s. Some of these are about materials that don't exist any longer. You might find that amazing resource that will help you. Now, what will you need? You need the information on the periodical. That's what you need to find out more. Now, what we recommend is actually trying to go after the publisher and seeing if the publisher has the article still, because that's probably going to be the least expensive. We want you to be able to find these. Now, in order to pull every one of these, we do have to charge a nominal fee. That's why we recommend looking at the publisher first, or looking to see if there's a periodical of Hear Ye that's at a local library or can be interlibrary loaned. Unfortunately, our entire collection is reference only. If all else fails, you can order the articles from us. It is $7.50 plus 20 cents a page. So again, if you can find it elsewhere, go for it. Free is our favorite four-letter word. But the biggest thing I want you to remember is we want you to be successful. We want you to be able to find the information that you are seeking. And those are just a few resources that you can utilize to research your ancestors and location-based resources. Contact us, ask us questions, join us for our programs, do whatever you want to do to interact with us. We want to talk to you. Here's some contact information, and hopefully we will hear from you soon.
Wow. I'm inspired, Allison. Thank you so much. And Karen as well. You can go ahead and in fact, everyone, please go ahead and turn your video on if you're comfortable with that. I've poked around in little bits and pieces, not having a clue what I was doing on your site back with my own family history there in Indiana, and I'm like raring to go now. I'm thrilled. Thank you so much. From our previous conversations, I know I'll be including a lot of Allison's materials in the notes here, and I know from my conversations with her that she's very serious in terms of the generosity and access with that spirit of a librarian to make sure that you find what you need. So let's go ahead and open it up for questions. Gwen, I see you popping right in. Did you have some questions to chime in with? No, I didn't want to put you on the spot. I also didn't want to leave you finding the mute button. I do have the power to unmute if any of you need some help with that. But I have some questions for you. You've talked about, I'm in Berkeley, California, which is, of course, a one of those big states, just saying. And it's basically a university town. It is the center of the California University of California system with a remarkable international university here. But honestly, the local public library, while it is fabulous, with a wonderful history center, they don't have a genealogy center at all. They have access to Ancestry, which is nice, and a couple of other databases, but that's it. And it, any hints on what I might be able to do to help goose them along? Because they clearly have an interest in doing it. They've expressed that they're talking about doing it. Is there some kind of sisterhood of libraries with genealogy centers or something like that?
Well, there's a listserv called Genealib, and that would probably be my biggest recommendation. So it's genealogy librarians, and they're from all over the country, and they like to share information, ask questions, ask advice of what to do in particular situations, and let people know if there's different classes that would benefit genealogy librarians.
That's a great idea. That's a great tip. Wow. Other questions and comments? That mute button. It's okay. We're all family here.
I just found something on one of my families. Not your area, but and it basically took me to a link to the Internet Archive, to a booklet that was digitized there. So yeah.
Wait, so you found your family through the Genealogy Center?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I'm doing a one-name study on the surname Pinchbeck, because that was my granny's surname, and I know a lot of them migrated to the US, so it is about the US lines of my family. But yeah, it's there.
Fantastic.
I just thought I'd search for something that I'm a fairly unique word. So yeah.
I love it. Success.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things that we've discovered is that there are these so many Americans that I find one of the first things they want to know is, when did we get here? They don't care whether we're related to the Queen, because probably nobody is. Not an American perspective. Or everybody is, depending on how you look at it. But they all want to know, when did we get here? And I've been poking at these questions. What is it that gets family excited? Because I want to figure out how to, make it easy for everybody to get everybody else excited. And when did we get here? So I built a little thing that I do, a sort of a collage thingy that has QR codes that go to the stories of each of the different lines. There's like 8 lines that came to the United States prior to, well, in the 17th century. So we got a lot, which is pretty cool. And sure enough, that gets them excited. So unfortunately, some of the names are things like Page, which are really difficult to search by, but that's okay. Locations and connections and married into. Beautiful, beautiful. You didn't even mention the remarkable series of programs that the library has.
Well, I was hoping to maybe mention it later, so thank you. We offer at least 2 programs every week. So on Eastern time, it's 2:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. So Tuesday, 2:30, Thursday, 6:30. And then during Family History Month, we have additional programs because it's Family History Month. And we also have some sort of engagement every single day. But we work very hard to have those programs. And then if the speaker gives permission, which isn't everybody, we put those on our YouTube channel. So I did a curated list for this topic, and that's what's in addition to my handout. I did a curated list, and then you can also look at the list of over, I was going to say over 300. I think it's 341 right now, 341 programs on genealogy.
And they're very well organized for SEO. So they often turn up in searches anyway when you're in that just Google it department. Yes, absolutely.
Kind of have a general question.
Please.
I noticed that in some of our local societies and our local genealogy library that the in-person attendance is like, since COVID has really tanked. Then I was wondering if you've noticed that in your library that people are more like, I'm going to email instead of go there, or I'm going to call instead of go, as far as volume goes. Have you noticed a decrease in volume, in-person volume since since COVID?
And a short answer, yes. We have not moved away from our virtual programming because it's so wildly successful. We do occasionally do in-person programs. We've been testing it. We partner with our local genealogical society, our local African American Genealogical Society, and our local Jewish Genealogy Society. And all of them have been doing either in-person or hybrid. And we've been watching their numbers and trying to see what sort of pickup that they're getting. And at this point, we are still 100% dedicated to the virtual because of how many more people are able to tune in and are willing to. As to the in-person, programming, I think, is a little bit more difficult with in-person because the adult learning length is a shorter period of time, which is actually why I really love this format, because you had it broken up into smaller segments, and that actually is better for adult learners. And so looking at that and saying, okay, we do an hour program online, people can still do the research on their own while they're listening, do something else, and still absorb the information. In person, they don't have that. And a lot of people are turning away from it because of that. They cannot multitask. They can't eat dinner while they're listening to it, or fold laundry while they're watching it. Like they don't have those options. And that has become so convenient throughout the years since COVID started. So I don't see that going back. However, we have been seeing an uptick in people coming physically to the library to do research. We've been starting to get the bus groups back in, et cetera. So it's interesting. We've been watching, and it's interesting going forward from COVID.
Really interesting question. I've done some things with the local Family Search Center here. They have a major center in Oakland, California, which is 20 minutes from me. And because of their mission, their overall goal, they want people physically in the space. And your mission is quite different in terms of wanting people to get access to it, and getting them the knowledge and letting them be successful with it. Which brings up another angle to this. I mean, Project Kin, we don't have any resources that anybody can be looking at, but we are working very hard to help people tell their stories. And I've been experimenting different ways to take the burden of the production of it, or the digital production anyway, of programs and things like that. Are there uh, since many of the books that you have about family history were those self-published books, there's small quantity productions, and that's what makes them so remarkable and unique. Has there been some highbrow thought about digital capture of these kinds of family history stories?
And a short answer, yes. Actually, one of the things that we have is, okay, let me find it. Under genealogy services at the top of the page, there's a Discovery to Life Stories. So we actually have been working to help people record their life stories, whether it be through audio or a video. And we do have a dedicated space in the Genealogy Center called the Life Story Center that people can book to come in and utilize this room that has comfortable seating and is quiet to do those recordings. They
Oh,
can
wow.
ask us for help with helping them record. We can let them have the space and they can record themselves or record a friend or family member. And we provide their recorders if they need it. But we also just recommend sometimes a cell phone is the best option. The quality has increased so much over the years that it can be utilized for that. So we recommend that people work on the oral history component.
Yeah.
So if you go through our life stories, you'll see different projects that individuals have been working on, and we have a couple more projects in the works. And then we also just have question lists, advice for doing the recordings, etc. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of everything.
That's really interesting, because I personally think that one of the most powerful elements is actually the space, because it tells the speaker, the subject of the conversation, that this is important, and the person sitting next to you really wants to hear this story. You've probably told it 100 times, and if you sit over the kitchen, they're like, yeah, 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 mom. And then somebody comes and goes. It's just noisy. It's hard to be focused. And it seems to me that that's such a really wonderful resource. Maybe that's a topic of future conversations, of something, ways in which we might be able to collaborate. And what I love about this library is that you're in a town somewhere in the middle of America, but you are thinking way beyond where that is. And now in the digital sphere, those borders don't matter. And I love the concept of the basement of the, I grew up with the stories about the basement of the British Library. Looking at you, Karen. And here we are in the basement of the library in Indiana, where they're digitizing all these materials. I rather think that in the basement of the British Museum that there's a fair amount of digitizing going on as well. If those are not all just archives or archived materials. I actually used to live around the corner from there in high school. But it's yeah, this is where the forward-thinking librarians and archivists and community members need the chance to work together and remind people not only how important those antique stories are, but how important their own stories are too. And maybe that's a good place to wrap this up. I want to thank you both, Allison and Karen, for taking the time to do this. It is late for you, Allison, in the U.S. Eastern time zone. And of course, Karen, here we are just after 1 in the morning. and all of you joining in our digital connection here, and who will, of course, be watching these recordings in the weeks and months to come, hopefully, as we spread this word out around the planet. I've dropped into the chat here links to the places where these recordings will be available, and I'm going to do my very best to make sure that all of you who've registered still have a way to get it one way or the other. I'm watching that against people who have already registered for Project Kim. It is, of course, free. It's intended to remain free, as is all of our programming. And we can do this because our costs are virtually nothing except for Zoom. That's my biggest expense. So we're working on that part. So it's a delight to have you all. Any last remarks? Okay.
Thank you for having me. It's been really interesting.
Thank you.
very
It's been a
much.
delight to have you.
Okay.
All righty. Bye-bye
Bye.
now.